In a community museum, if we talked earlier about the change of what museums do, in our current exhibit, our hockey exhibit, one of the things we did, we put out a call for team photos that people had in scrapbooks that used to be on their fridge that were in a box in the basement. We had some 65 team photos dropped off here, and we created a gallery of all these team photos which were contributed to us. What happened next we never expected, and that was where people began to bring us artifacts. And they said, I also have this. I have a sweater from the 1951-52 Stratford Indians. I have a team jacket when my dad played for the 1947 Craylor Junior B team. I have my jacket from this. I have an old skate sharpener. And we began to get artifacts came into us which were incredible. We had a guy bring in his ski jacket or team jacket that he wore in the 1968 Olympics when he was a member of the Canadian Olympic hockey team. He brought in his bronze medal that we put on display, his Hudson's Bay jacket, which he wore in the closing ceremonies. But people have all sorts of things in their closets, in their drawers, tucked away in safety deposit boxes that should be in a museum. And I think about last week, we took ownership of the Brooks steam car from the Perth County Historical Foundation, and we brought out the steam car. And one of the things was, why is it here? And I said, to coin a phrase or to steal a phrase from Indiana Jones, I said, this should be in a museum. People bring us stuff and say, what do you think of my Olympic gold medal? Or what do you think of this jacket? Or, what do you think of this picture? And I said, that should be in a museum. And we provide a venue for the community to show things and display things to the community. And that's what we do. And as we look at the role of a museum in a modern society, I think that's one of the things we do. We had a family bring in what amounted to a incredible collection of their grandfather who died at Passchendaele in World War I. And they had the letters from the Red Cross. They had the letters of the Department of War saying, we have bad news for you. We have his medals. We have an incredible portrait of him. And this family brought it in and said, we want to give this to the museum. And we want to give it to, if you use the phrase, we wanted to give it to the museum for safekeeping. And we want to make sure that this incredible shrine to their grandfather is looked after. And it was a remarkable family history, which they brought in a couple of cardboard boxes and said, here is this remarkable collection from almost 100 years ago, and we want to give it to the museum for safekeeping. So there's two aspects to people bringing things to the museum. It's a shorter term where people say, I'd like the community to see this. It really fits in with an exhibit you're currently doing. Or you should have this. We're worried about we're older. We're worried about what's going to happen to us. We're worried whether our kids want it, whether our grandchildren want it. And you know what? Maybe it should be at a museum for safekeeping. And that's the other role we do. One of the things a museum has to do is you have to stay rotating. You have to change your exhibits. And I started here in June, so 6 or 7 months ago, and we've had 3 new exhibits in those 6 or 7 months. Even the permanent exhibits we have, which is the agricultural one called Can You Dig It, and the Perth Regiment one, we change those every 3 or 4 months. So our feeling is that if you haven't been in the museum for 3 or 4 months, there's a new reason to come. In addition to that, there's other things happening here. There's writers' workshops, there's snowshoeing, we have 7 acres of trails that every morning as I come to my desk, I see a couple of cars pull into the parking lot, and they go back and they go on a walk around our groomed trails and let the dog out and use this property. And I think that's fantastic. We've got a very holistic property here, a treed lot. It's almost rural. You're a couple hundred meters outside the city of Stratford, but in some ways you're far removed from it. And the property itself is reason to come here. We just committed to a school group or a tour group here this morning where they want to come here and tour the museum, and then we serve everyone tea and cookies in our lunchroom. Or in the summer we'll have groups come here and we have picnic tables out on the front lawn and a wraparound porch, and a bus will come in here en route to a play, and some people go through the museum and some people just sit on the porch. And there's a lot of holistic reasons to come to this museum, and I think most museums. And the idea of I want to come here and look at artifacts is certainly our core purpose. There's a lot of other reasons to come here, and we have people who come here regularly, every few weeks, and they see things they didn't notice before, they look at things in greater depth, or they just come here and it's a nice place to be. One of the things that when I took this job I was asked to do was to create some partnerships and to become more connected to the community. And one of the first phone calls I had, I'd like to say I made it, but I didn't, is one of the first relationships that reached out to us was the Stratford Festival. And for years, the Stratford Festival has had what amounted to a mini museum in downtown Stratford, and they called it the Exhibit. For whatever reason, it was discontinued. It's very difficult to operate a museum. It's not a for-profit venture, and I think the logical place for an exhibit is at the museum. And the Stratford Festival thought so too. And we were approached by the festival to mount an exhibit at the museum, which we agreed to in a matter of, I would say within a half an hour, we had worked out the details as to how it was going to work. And we've turned over a space this summer where the Stratford Festival is going to mount an exhibit here, which will celebrate the 2014 playbill at the Stratford Festival. And as a result of that, rather serendipitously, an hour or so later, we had a call from the University of Toronto Rare Book Library that had to do with the first folio, and that is the first published collection of Shakespeare's works, and it dates to 1630. There's 241 first folios still in existence, and there's one in Canada. And the first folio is going to be at the Stratford Museum in August of this year. It's a remarkable coincidence. It's a remarkable series of events that led to that. And the relationship with the festival, which extended in this relationship with the University of Toronto, has led to a 3-month exhibit for the Stratford Festival being here, as well as Shakespeare's first folio being here. To put that first folio in perspective, is there was 750 printed. There's 200 and some still existence. One's in Canada. The last one that sold in 2000, and it sold for about $6 million. In 2010, one was stolen and damaged, and the insurance claim was 17 million pounds. So it's about $25 million. And for us to have that in Stratford on the 450th anniversary of Shakespeare's birth in this community is, I think, terrific. It speaks to the influence of the Stratford Festival, and speaks to their commitment to this community, that they would bring that here, and that we're going to be able to, people will be able to view the first published collection of Shakespeare's works. We talked about doing it every year, and it had such traction where we just saw the merits of it so quickly that it was great for the festival, that they could still have an exhibit without the cost, and we could have a professionally mounted exhibit at the Stratford Museum, where we would now become a destination point for the 600,000 or so patrons that come to the Stratford Festival every year. It just, if you talk about win-win, I know it's such a cliche, but it was such win-win that it was, this is a place to have an exhibit, and the festival thought it was the right place, and the University of Toronto thought it was the perfect venue, a curated environment to have the first folio. And within a half an hour, the sort of change that took place at the Stratford Museum was palpable. Where we said all of a sudden we had greater relevance. We became a destination point. The Stratford Festival is selling tickets to the Stratford Museum off their website. The Stratford Festival is going to have a catered event for their members at the Stratford Museum. We were selling tickets to see one of the most important books in Canadian literature, not in Canadian literature, in English literature, will be here in Stratford. And it's a remarkable development.